They came in silence, crawling beneath the steel beasts that had once crushed entire nations, not soldiers, not tanks, not guns, but insects, cockroaches, and in one of the most bizarre, almost forgotten chapters of World War II, they played a chilling role in hunting the mighty German Panzers. This is not science fiction. This is a story of sabotage, survival, and how even the smallest enemy can bring giants to their knees. Voiceover shifts to deep, intense tone, music steady and foreboding. It was the winter of 1942. The Eastern Front groaned under the weight of clashing empires. Hitler's Wehrmacht had driven deep into the Soviet Union, unleashing wave after wave of panzer divisions, steel titans that had steamrolled across Europe. But now, in the bitter cold of the Russian steppe, something began to change. The German war machine, once unstoppable, started to break down, and not from enemy fire. German mechanics at the front began reporting a strange phenomenon. Tanks, brand new from the factories, would suddenly stall. Radios would fall silent, electrical systems would short out. No signs of battle damage, no visible sabotage, just failure. Confusion gave way to panic. The enemy wasn't always a Soviet rifle or T-34. Sometimes it was hidden in the wiring, burrowed in the insulation, gnawing, chewing, multiplying cockroaches. But not just any cockroaches. These were fuel-seeking, heat-loving pests that had infested Soviet supply depots, rail cars, and even abandoned buildings. As German troops seized these locations, they unknowingly brought the invaders into their own ranks. Soviet engineers quickly realized the advantage. According to declassified Russian records, military units began to accidentally abandon supply caches known to be infested. German troops, desperate for fuel and shelter, would move in, and the cockroaches would come with them. Once inside the warm interiors of tanks and trucks, the insects did what they always do: they nested. They chewed through rubber, insulation, and wiring. The damage was subtle but devastating. Starter motors failed in the freezing cold. Communications went down in the heat of battle. A panzer without coordination was no better than a coffin on tracks. In one shocking report from the 3rd Panzer Division near Kursk, over 17 armored vehicles were rendered immobile in a single week. The official cause: internal electrical malfunction. But German technicians began to whisper about an insect plague. Field reports spoke of infestations so dense that entire engine bays were coated in a layer of writhing brown bodies. And while the Wehrmacht tried to keep the problem secret, word spread quickly through the ranks. Soldiers joked grimly that their tanks weren't being stopped by Stalin, but by Stalin-esque bugs. Soviet propaganda wasted no time. Leaflets dropped over German lines depicted cockroaches swarming over broken Nazi tanks. One even bore the mocking title, "The Führer's Fear, Roaches in the Ranks." It seemed absurd until it wasn't. Veterans on both sides would recall stories of crews abandoning perfectly operational vehicles, refusing to step back inside until every insect saboteur was burned out. The Soviets, ever pragmatic, encouraged the hysteria. Engineers adapted flamethrowers not just for enemy trenches, but for decontaminating tank interiors. By late 1943, the German High Command issued internal memos urging stricter sanitation, storage procedures, and pest control, a surreal wartime directive for an army battling on 3 fronts. But the damage had been done, morale dipped. Trust in equipment eroded. The invincible aura of the panzer divisions had been chipped away, not just by Soviet steel, but by Soviet strategy, and nature's smallest soldiers. This strange saga eventually faded into the shadows of greater battles, overshadowed by Stalingrad, D-Day, and Berlin, but those who lived it never forgot. For them, war wasn't always fought with bullets or bombs. Sometimes it was fought with biology, with psychology, with fear that crawled through the vents at night, and maybe that's the quiet truth of war. It's not always the biggest weapon that wins. Sometimes it's the one no one sees coming. The one that gnaws through steel, through certainty, through arrogance, until all that's left is silence. So the next time you think of tanks and titans, remember the cockroaches. They didn't wear uniforms. They didn't carry flags. But in their own way, they hunted the panzers and won.